be able to fight back in a way just by helping each other is really been a very big comfort to a lot of us.
Like there's something that's just, I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, there's something that's very warm and fuzzy about that alone. Just seeing the community rise up and be willing to help. Hey everybody, Ken Hendricks from OpenEnded here. Thanks so much for joining me again today. Today I'm going to be talking to a couple friends of mine, Jenn Bartram and David Izraelevitz from the Los Alamos, New Mexico area. They're both part of a remarkable effort to spread love and support throughout the community called All Together Los Alamos. These are definitely the kinds of things that we want to be hearing about during these times. It's the good news that we all need to hear about. And one of the things that I'm certainly enjoying about this whole era that we're experiencing together, this COVID era that we're living through and adjusting to, is seeing people think outside of the box when it comes to creative ways that we can work with one another and support one another. And so we're going to be chatting about those types of things today. I've worked with these two in multiple capacities over the years that we've known each other, and I'm real excited to have them on to chat about what they're up to. Welcome, David and Jenn. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's great to see you guys. And thanks for your patience with me. I know that this conversation was a long time coming. It took a bit for us to get together. And so, yeah, thank you so much for doing this. So for the folks that may be less familiar with each of you and the work that you do within our community, can you give just a quick overview of what each of you do? Maybe you go first, Jenn.
Thank you. I am a chaplain for police and fire as a volunteer position, and I also I facilitate with a dear friend of mine a grief group through Golden Willow Retreat. And so that has really given me some really great experience. And I'm also a board member for the Community Health Council for a number of years. So a number of different things in the community, but all of them really fun and very exciting for me. Thanks.
Awesome. What about you, David?
So I'm an engineer by training, and I worked at the laboratory here, Los Alamos National Laboratory, for many years, and I retired about 3 years ago. And while I was at the laboratory, and certainly since I've been retired, I've been involved in different local organizations. I'm an elected official currently on the Los Alamos County Council, kind of our city council. And I'm also on the board of the Los Alamos Community Foundation. And just through my family and so forth, been involved in different community activities over the years.
Well, one thing that's pretty evident as you both describe what you do is that both of you have service-oriented roles in multiple capacities within the community. So thank you both for what you do for the community. We need people that are passionate about those types of roles and filling those types of roles. So with All Together Los Alamos, I know that both of you are hesitant to take, responsibility for this effort because it's such a collective. We were talking about that before, but Jenn, can you tell us a little bit about what the idea is and where it came from?
Well, when COVID first started, David gave a number of us a call and said, what can we do to help people who might have otherwise fallen through the cracks? And we want to make sure that we're helping our neighbors in the best way that we can. So he called myself, Maura O'Neill, who has a blog called the LA Daily Reporter, Christine Koblenz, who is really great working with Healthy Schools Initiative, and also with Mr. Brake from the Fellowship Church, and Kristen Carmichael, who has really great talent of organizing nonprofits together. Jordan Redmond, who's the executive director for the Los Alamos Family Council, and James Robinson, who is also on our county council, and Sarah Scott, who's on our county council. And we had a number, 3 or 4 meetings together as much as we could with everyone being busy and trying to figure out who do we need to offer some additional services, How do we put it together? And how can we best do multi-layered things, not just the top layer of something, an issue? Because a lot of people have an issue that seems apparent, like needing food. But oftentimes there's additional things underneath that we really want to look at to help people sustain through COVID as much as possible. So David being David and knowing everybody in town, he put this together and then made sure that we were in collaboration with the wheels that were already going, making sure that everybody knew about it. And so we work with a number of other organizations to make sure we weren't doing overlap, and to make all of our resources go the best that we could. And so we did a survey in the beginning to find out, you know, from different organizations in town, the grocery stores, the pharmacies, the hardware stores, things like that. And we asked them, what do you see is going to be a problem? So we wanted to put that network together of support for a multiple different issues that might come up. And not knowing where this was going, it was kind of a throw the darts and see what we've got. But I think we did a pretty good job, and then adding people along the way and making sure that it's advertised as much as possible.
I gotta love all those shout outs that you gave there too, to all the people involved. That sounds like a really impressive team that came together initially to come up with this and to put this together. So it sounds, in what you've told me before, it sounds like the effort is really open-ended in a great way, you know, dealing with just whatever folks might need help with. It's not just specific needs and specific types of services that you're bringing together volunteers to help people with. It's really just kind of like, what do you need help with, right, David? Like, what was the idea behind that, and how versatile is it?
Yeah, so like Jen says, the idea originally was pretty open-ended because, you know, being in local government, I knew that there were certain government programs that could be used, and that there are a lot, the senior centers and schools and so forth have some structured services. But we also knew that there would be volunteers and people who wanted a way to help that were not going through these formal mechanisms. And we wanted to find a way to kind of harness that energy. We knew that we wanted to be respectful and safe in terms of interactions, making sure that we didn't have, you know, we maintain social distancing, and that if there are issues about personal privacy information and so forth, we were respectful of that. But within that context, we just put out a call of you know, who was in the community who might want to help, and what we found was that there was really a lot of interest in just people. It was almost a release for them to find a way that they could help their community. That's kind of how it came together, and at this point we have about 60 volunteers in a small community that have different areas. Some people are willing to get out of the house and drive to run some errands or to deliver some things. Other people are willing to make telephone contact. We have some people that are very good with computers and with video chatting and Zoom and so forth. Mm-hmm. So that was the way that we could bring it together. But it's been a lot of the things that we thought might be needed were not as much in demand, or of course we're in the early parts of this pandemic, so who knows what the future needs will be. But some of the areas that we didn't expect to be needs, like tutoring, we've been able to connect some volunteers with that. Again, relate to the schools, getting them ready for school, this strange hybrid or not hybrid and future hybrid.
Yeah.
As well as the things that we expected, which were a lot of them, people wanted to stay in the house, and could we bring items to them? Like Jen said, she contacted a lot of the local businesses to see what types of delivery mechanisms they had, what kind of delivery mechanisms maybe we could help support. as well as things that, for example, the senior center can do. So we've tried to stay flexible, and as this pandemic has progressed, we've found little niches and areas that we didn't expect, and more or less demand in other areas.
So I know you mentioned before we started recording and everything that there's been a little bit of a dip in requests. So this might not be the most essential need with the program, but how would folks who are maybe watching this and who are interested in helping, how would they reach out to you all to get on the list of volunteers to go through that process? Jen?
Well, actually, that's a good question for David, because he runs this incredible spreadsheet. And what we wanted to do was to make sure, if I can add to what David was saying, when a volunteer goes on to the website, we want to make sure, like he said, respecting what they are comfortable with, but also identifying their talent. Because as you know, Ken, the community is just amazing, the talent that is up here. And so we wanted to be able to identify that. And so they go onto the website, they fill out the application, but sort of the interesting thing that we found is some of the leaders in town have contacted David and said, okay, we have this or that. This might be coming up and we could use a few volunteers for a few hours or an afternoon or a weekend or an ongoing. And then he sends out the email to all the volunteers and says, here's another volunteer opportunity. It is amazing how many people show up. And so, David, if you'd like to specify the website and any additional information on that.
Yeah, sure. So, of course, the spreadsheet is my favorite part of this whole thing, because I am an engineer after all. Jen handles the nice human contact, and she's such a
you just love
person.
spending time with your spreadsheet.
I did. So we've set up a website that basically has 3 buttons on it. And one is I can offer some help. Another button which is I could use some help. And a third button which is I'm a teacher and I have some needs for that. Because we knew that teachers being on the front lines would be a very stressful situation. And so if you're someone who would like some assistance, you press that button, it opens up a little request form, and it asks you the kinds of things that, some contact information, the types of things that you might need, whether you live in our community or not, because even if you're not in our community, we'd like to take that request and then try to sign you up with other organizations that might be helpful to you. Really, a lot of times, the best thing that we can do to help is to just inform people of opportunities that are already available. So, for example, we ask them if they're above a certain age, and if they are, then when we contact them, we say, "Are you aware of the senior center and that they can do all sorts of things for you? Deliver a meal for you. They can do run some errands. Some of the things that we don't do as an organization is we don't give rides because there's kind of a level of privacy and a level of background checks and so forth that we're not organized to do. But we can certainly let people know of where those opportunities are available. So a lot of it, what we do is just connecting people with their needs. If, on the other hand, you are someone who, and it could be the same person that has a certain need, but also has something, like Jen says, to offer, then that's a separate button, and you put in there your contact information, what skills you may have, your availability, whether you have a car available to you to make deliveries. And like I said, it's been a great response of people who want to help.
Yeah.
And it's been a process of trying to connect those two together. And then the third button is more specifically about teachers, because it's one of those emerging needs that we didn't see at the beginning. But one of the support organizations for teachers contacted us and said, well, you have this core of volunteers. we have some teachers that need to have their classroom set up for remote learning, and other things like that. That we could help. So it's been really nice to have this mailing list that we can turn on and say, here's another example. There's a food collection that we wanted to do, but which we've advertised, but they needed someone to babysit the room where the collection was being done. So you have to sit there for several hours while other people bring food and it's organized. So that's another area where we could bring volunteers, and people had a spare couple of hours, they could come in and we would organize the scheduling. So hopefully as this progresses, we could stay flexible and use that core to communicate specifically with those who have the time and interest to help the community. And certainly I found it very rewarding. I know Jen has as well. We're all under stress and feel kind of helpless with this invisible enemy that we have, and to be able to fight back in a way just by helping each other is really been a very big comfort to a lot of us.
I'm sure there's a level of comfort and reward just in seeing people come together with that desire to help. Like there's something that's just, I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, there's something that's very warm and fuzzy about that alone. Just seeing the community rise up and be willing to help. But, you know, one of the things that I guess it's part of the human condition, because we come across it a whole lot, people that are in a situation when they could really use some help have such a hard time speaking up to say, I could use some help. And so like with that being, something that's really necessary for an effort like this to really, bear its fruit, so to speak. Jen, what would you say to people who are in a situation where they could use some help and they're just kind of feeling reluctant about speaking up about it?
That was one of the things that we have been addressing. And for instance, there's Ministerial Alliance here in Los Alamos. And David and I kept bringing it up and asking the members of Ministerial Alliance, are you seeing a lot of need and they're just not coming to us? Are they reaching out to you? And also they have not seen a lot of need. We decided, or we think we figured out that a lot of it is more neighbor to neighbor, that people feel a little more comfortable speaking up to a neighbor who might be next door, who's already offered a little help, to say, I could use this or that. So then we came up with these invitations, and it was just a little quarter page that said, please let us help in any way. And we started spreading those out in the neighborhoods so that the neighbors knew that there was this resource for them to help their neighbor. And so that is part of it. It is difficult to ask for help. And like David said, we're flexible about whatever it is. And so if it is a matter of a little bit of money, there's some really great resources that we have here in Los Alamos, but once you've tapped into those, oftentimes you can't again. So that's one of the things we wanted to make sure, is that we had another level of assistance. And so we've acquired, additional things. So trying to help the neighbors know that there's resources. And so we tried to put the word out through, like I said, one of the people on the original committee was Maura O'Neill, and she runs the LA Daily Reporter. We've put articles in the Los Alamos Daily Post. I'm going to cheat and look at my notes here because I want to make sure we don't miss anything. We've also worked with Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. So like David said, we tap into the senior center. So if somebody's over 60, we try to refer there, because the senior center has an immense amount of possibilities of assistance. And we want to make sure that people have that resource. If they're younger or families, we reach and work with Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. There's also self-help. Ministerial Alliance, we're coordinating also with the occupational medicine through LANL and helping with that, the Community Health Council, and Sarah Scott has put it in her articles a lot. And I gotta say, Ken, I'm so impressed with our county council because we have David, we have Sarah, we have James helping with that, and having the initiative come from them has been very helpful when we're trying to figure out a new way of doing it, to have that little oomph of power behind us with the county council. So by having the county as organized as it is, that's helpful. 311 is aware of what we are doing here. David taps in to make sure that our county manager is aware of what we're doing. So the communication, we keep trying to reach out and say to people, you know, come to us if you have any questions at all. And if we can't help you directly, we will help you find a resource. So we're hoping the neighbor to neighbor, and of course with this interview and stuff, we're hoping to reach more people. So we appreciate you talking with us today about this.
Yeah, thank you both for everything that you're doing. I mean, one thing that I'm thinking too is like, what would you say to someone who's you know, being exposed to this idea, and maybe they don't live in the Los Alamos community and they're thinking about what it would look like to start something like this in their own community? What would you say to them?
David's spreadsheet.
Well, certainly we'd be happy
get a
to
copy of the spreadsheet.
we'd be happy to share. I think that let me go back to the request, and and hopefully I'll remember to answer your question. When we approach someone about using, for example, senior center resources or county resources, we tell them, your taxes have paid for these. This is something that you deserve, that you have earned through your contributions to the community.
Yeah, you paid for it yourself, right?
You have paid for it yourself in one way or the other. But also, when you have need of your neighbors or of a large organization, you've also earned that. You know, sometime in the future, you may actually be able to help your neighbor just like that neighbor or volunteer is helping you. So don't think of it like, oh, and now I'm in someone's debt. It's really more that we're building up this righteous interactions that we have. So if someone wants to start an organization, I think that they will probably be surprised, pleasantly surprised by how much energy there is for people that want to help. And some of it may be because at some point in their life, they've had that assistance. And now this is a way for them to give back. So I think there's a lot of that currency going around, people wanting to help because they've been helped before, or because maybe in the future they can see. So, and this is the time for all that righteous support to come together to help each other, and either because of your prior contributions or your future contributions. So I hope that that's something that will resonate with you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then one last thing I'm thinking is, you know, given the fact that, you know, we talked about how the types of help that people might be able to receive through the program, it's beautiful how that's really open-ended, and something else that's really open-ended that's a little harder for people to deal with is how long are we going to be dealing with these circumstances and this different way of life, and when are things going to, you know, start hopefully at least inching back toward, you know, a previous way of life that we weren't so concerned about just being together and enjoying one another's company and things. So it's hard to not know when there's some sort of end in sight for some of these things that are more difficult for us. But what kind of message would you give to folks out in the community for just hanging in there and staying hopeful?
I think for one of the things that we've been working on in the Chaplain Corps and the Behavioral Health Response Team is to celebrate and to enjoy rituals that we can do, and to, you know, like Zoom. Thank goodness for Zoom. Yeah. And I'm impressed at how close a group can feel even with Zoom. and to continue the rituals and celebrations that we can, not in large groups, but in small groups. David recently had a wedding in his family, but he was still able to do it and do it safely. I mean, there's still a lot of things that we can do, and we need to continue that. But I'll tell you, one of the things, a confession, when we started this, I told David, we've got to set up the volunteers first, because we're going to have a large amount of need, and we want to make sure that we have the volunteers in place. So, like he said, so many people want to give. And so many people are wanting to reach out. And so to take that opportunity to call a friend, to, send a note card to somebody, to, just reach out in some way. But when you do service for someone else, it helps with the hope that we all need at this point. And I think that's why we ended up with over 60 volunteers, is because that is how I think the hope is built to get through this, however long it takes. But if we do it together, it's going to make such a difference. And I'll tell you, the volunteers come back and say that they've really enjoyed that time spent. We have a lot of family members that go together and enjoy, because, the college kids might be at home and stuff. And so they were helping out with it and everything. And I think service to others gives us hope during this.
Awesome. And what's the website one more time?
Altogether, losalamos.org.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jen, for having this conversation with me. And I hope that by getting the word out, we're going to be able to help people to just be exposed to good news that's happening, good things that are happening, reasons to stay hopeful, and maybe even some real tangible, practical help that they might be able to have through this program you all are doing. Thank you for having this chat with me today.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it.